Welcome back. Tonight, I guess it is, because I haven't been able to record for 2 days because of the rain. Anyway, welcome back to Hamlet Act II. And the main question that's going on in this act is, what is wrong with Hamlet? Well, what's wrong is that he just saw his father's ghost, or his father's spirit, and his father told him he was murdered. And so he is acting crazy. But remember in the first act, when he told the soldiers, whatever I do with my behavior, do not judge me. And so what we have in this act, as well as the question, is Hamlet becoming playwright, director, and actor. So opening up, Polonius is checking on his son, and he's sending Reynaldo out to make sure that he's not whoring or drinking too much. He wants to know what's going on, and attributing, he's a youth. That's how youth are. Can you imagine? I don't know. I didn't grow up in a culture where that was an expected part of growing up. So if you go to line 25, Polonius says, or drinking, fencing, swearing, quarreling, drabbing, which means whoring. You may go so far. Go and badmouth my son so that I can find out what's really going on. And then after Reynaldo leaves, Ophelia comes onto the stage. So he's already sent someone to spy on his daughter, on his son, and now his daughter will talk to him. And if you go to line about 75, Polonius says, "How no, Ophelia? What is the matter?" And what's the matter with her, partially, is that she is in love with Hamlet. And Hamlet has showed up recently not looking like himself. He's dirty. He's not even wearing his stockings all the way up. They're falling down. And back at this time, people wore boots to keep the shit off them, because shit was flowing through the streets. Not just from animals. It was people's shit. People would empty out their pots of shit onto the ground. And so people wore boots to keep the shit off of them. Can you imagine? I am thankful for modern plumbing, personally. And Polonius says there, what? In the name of God, what? And she says, my lord, as I was sewing in my closet, meaning her small room, Lord Hamlet, with his doublet all embraced, no hat upon his head, his stockings fouled, unguarded, and down giveth to his ankle. So, his stockings fouled, meaning there's crap on them. Isn't that nice? I just tempered my speech. Hell is his shirt, his knees knocking each other, and with a look so piteous and purport, as if he'd been loosed out of hell, to speak of horrors, he comes before me. Meaning, he was in distress, and I could not recognize him. Now, what Polonius is going to conclude is, since you've been my good daughter, Hamlet must be going crazy because he loves you so much. This is not why. Hamlet is upset. Why? Because his father has come back and told him that he was murdered, and that Hamlet must seek vengeance against his father's brother, his own uncle, who wants to persist in calling him his son. If you go to line 102, Polonius says to his daughter, I will go seek the king. This is the very ecstasy of love. Now, I don't know about you all, but when I am in love with a person, that doesn't make me want to be less kempt. It doesn't make me want to have shit on my, excrement on my socks. When I'm in love, I'm just in love. And I'm happy. I don't look white as a ghost. So then we go to the next scene. Oh, because Ophelia says in this first scene to her dad, "No, I have played hard to get. I haven't even accepted the messages he's written to me." Which, can you imagine this? If you're grieving your father because he died, and then you're upset with your mother because she didn't seem to grieve your father at all, and then you get told by your father that he was murdered, wouldn't you be a little upset? And add on that the fourth thing, so 4, your girlfriend won't even talk to you. She's blocked him. It's not on Facebook, but she's being the good daughter. So we go to scene 2, and we'll have the king and the queen, Hamlet's mother and his stepfather, his uncle, talking about what's wrong with him. But the first thing off is, just as Polonius sent Rinaldo to spy on his own son to see if he's whoring or not, the king is going to send 2 of Hamlet's best friends to spy on him as well. And these 2 best friends are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. And Tom Stoppard wrote a play back in the 60s called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Oops! Spoiler alert, I just gave up what will happen to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern during this play, but not in this act. So, I didn't spoil this act for you. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are being assigned by the king, Hamlet's uncle, who knows that he murdered his own brother, to make sure Hamlet is okay. And the king beats around the bush and beats around the bush, and he says in line 10 of scene 2, so much for the understanding of himself. He is totally condescending towards Hamlet, saying that Hamlet must not even understand himself. Which, if you saw a ghost, would you believe everything was true? I don't think so. And in line 36, 35, the queen, Hamlet's mother, thanks Rosencrantz and Guildenstern for taking up the mission of spying on him, and says, so in 36, "And I beseech you to instantly visit my too much changed son." So she's calling Hamlet changed. The king himself is calling him just plain crazy. But if you think about the people that you've known who are grieving, doesn't it seem a bit as if they're crazy? They're not. They're grieving. And now Polonius enters the stage and says, look, the ambassadors are back from Norway, and it turns out everything went just fine. So that Fortinbras, who wanted to wage war against this kingdom to steal back the lands that were stolen under his father's reign, he's going to be a good little boy. Oh, so then we have the example of the good son there. he's all tamed. And in line 70, what's reported is that Fortinbras makes vows before his uncle nevermore to give the assay of arms against your majesty. And old Norway, overcome with joy, gives him 3,000 crowns, meaning a hell of a lot of money, in annual fee, and is commissioned to employ those soldiers against the Polacks. But he needs to travel through our land, Denmark, in order to get to Poland so that he can go fight. So it looks like everything's settled there. The king is happy because it was his brother who waged the war and took the land, and now he can continue to rule that land and not worry about some sort of insurrection. But the king is worried. He's worried about an insurrection from his nephew, his brother's son Hamlet. And then we have Polonius. And I want you to think of Polonius. You know, we talked about last act, how he gives advice and everything. But he is a blabbermouth. Or he speaks all the time. And he says the same thing over and over again. Hold on. Let me be Polonius for a second. Polonius is a blabbermouth. And he speaks all the time, over and over again. Oh, wait a minute. Let me be Polonius. He is a blabbermouth who speaks all the time, over and over again. And so in line 85, Polonius says, look, all this business is well ended. My liege and madam, to expostulate what majesty should be, what duty is, why day is day, night, night, and time is time, were nothing but to waste night, day, and time. And since all of that would be bullshit, he's saying, therefore, since brevity is the soul of wit, of intelligence, and tediousness the limbs and outward flourishes, I will be brief. Anytime Polonius says the words, I will be brief, this is just a laugh line, because the man does not know how to be brief. And his diagnosis of what is wrong with Hamlet is, your son, your noble son is mad. Not meaning mad, like angry, but meaning, but for Polonius, he believes Hamlet's behavior has to do with his heart is broken because his own daughter has rejected his courtship. He's crazy in love. And in a way this is true, not because Hamlet's in love with Ophelia. He's crazy because he loves his father who was murdered. So Polonius, being brief, says, mad call I it, for defying true madness, what is it but to be nothing else but mad? Circular, circular, circular. So, I could stand here and tell you, let's define crazy. Well, we all know that crazy is crazy, and therefore it's crazy. Thank you. There's no logic there at all, right? But let that go. And the Queen says, more matter with less art. Cut to the chase. Quit wasting our time. Madam, Polonius says, I swear I use no art at all. That he is mad, 'tis true. 'Tis true, 'tis pity, and pity 'tis true. A foolish figure, but farewell it, for I will use no art. mad. Let us grant him then. And now remains that we can find out the cause of this effect, or rather say, the cause of this defect. He's a real punster, you know. For this effect defective comes by cause. Thus it remains, and the remainder thus. Perpend. I have a daughter. Well, she is mine. Can you imagine thinking you own your offspring? Who in her duty and obedience, mark, listen, has given me this now and gather and surmise. And then he reads a note from Hamlet to Ophelia, which says, to the celestial and my soul's idol, the most beautified Ophelia. And then he stops and he becomes a literary critic. That's an ill phrase, a vile phrase. Beautified is a vile phrase. But you shall hear thus. And then he reads again, in her excellent white bosom these, and then he interrupts, well, and company. And the queen asked him, came this from Hamlet to her? Did Hamlet send that to her? Good madam, stay a while. I will be faithful. And then he reads, doubt thou the stars are fire, doubt that the sun does move, doubt truth to be a liar, but never doubt I love. Oh, dear Ophelia, I am ill at these numbers. I have no art to reckon my groans, but that I love thee best, oh, most best. Believe it. Adieu. Thine evermore, most lady, whilst this machine is to him. I will be yours forever while I have a body. I don't see how that's ill-spoken. I think that's a true testament of love. And yet, Polonius is busy criticizing the language used. Why? Because he wants to hear himself talk. And then he reports to the kings that his daughter obeyed him when he told her, you need to play hard to get. Don't see Hamlet, don't talk to Hamlet, don't accept any of his messages. And the king, of course, likes Polonius' thesis because he is worried that Hamlet is acting crazy because he knows what he did, what the brother of the king, who is now the new king, did. And so if you go to a line about 148, the king says, do you think this? And the queen says, it may be, very like. And Polonius says, had there been such a time, I'd fain know that I have positively said it is so when it's proved otherwise. Have I ever lied to you? And the king says, not that I know. And Polonius points to his head and his shoulder and says, well, take this from this if it be otherwise. If I'm wrong, you can behead me. And the king says, but how may we try it further? We need more proof to find out if that's really what's going on with Hamlet. And Polonius says, you know, sometimes he walks for hours together here in the lobby. And the queen's like, yeah, we know. That's kind of his exercise routine. And Polonius says, at such a time, I will loose my daughter to him. Be you and I behind the arras then, mark the encounter, if he love her not. So what we'll do is we'll set up, I will loose my daughter. Can you imagine? He feels like he owns her. I will send her out there, and we will hide, and we'll see if Hamlet really loves her. And the king, of course, says in line 166, we will try it. And then the queen talks about how Hamlet is reading something off stage, and And she says, look, where sadly the poor wretch comes reading. And Polonius says, away, I do beseech you both. Away, I will board him presently. I will confront him. So the king and the queen go out, and Polonius says, oh, give me leave. How does my good lord Hamlet? How are you? How are you, dear? And Hamlet says, well, God of mercy, do you know me, my lord? Excellent, well, you are a fishmonger. Hamlet is playing crazy right here. And he's saying, now, literary critics will say, no, Hamlet really was crazy. I don't believe that for a second. I think that Hamlet is grief-stricken, angry grief-stricken. And so he's calling the high advisor to the court a fisherman, which is a much, much lower status. Why? To piss him off. Even though it's could be his future father-in-law. Not I, my lord. Then I would you were so honest a man. Honest, my lord. Yes, sir, to be honest, as this world goes, it's to be one man picked out of 10,000. So here we see some truth in what Hamlet's point of view is, and that is that Hamlet is depressed. He doesn't see any honesty around him. He doesn't even take delight in nature anymore. And he goes on to say, Polonius says, that's very true, my lord. And then Hamlet says, for if the sun breed maggots in a dead dog, being a good kissing carrion. Oh, have you a daughter? I have. Let her not walk in the sun. Conception is a blessing, but as your daughter may conceive, friend, look to it. So Hamlet looks at his supposedly future father-in-law and says, you'd better keep a good eye on your daughter because she might get pregnant before marriage. And Polonius says to the audience, how say you by that? Still harping on my daughter? Yet he knew me not at first. He said I was a fishmonger. He is far gone, and truly in my youth I suffered much extremity for love, very near this. I'll speak to him again. What do you read, my lord? Words, words, words. And this, I can tell you, would be where I say Shakespeare is commenting on his own life in the sense that his life is filled with words, words, words. And even words, 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 when you're one of the greatest playwrights in human history, can make you tired. Okay? So, what's the matter, my lord? Between who I mean the matter you read, my lord. I mean, what are you reading about? Even though matter, Shakespeare's doing a double entendre again. So what's wrong? Or what's it about? You and I both know there's a difference. Shakespeare knew there was a difference. However, he uses a pun to explain all of that. And Hamlet says, slander, sir, for the satirical rose says, here, old men have gray beards, their faces are wrinkled, their eyes purging thick amber and plum tree gum, and they have a plentiful lack of wit. So old people are wrinkly and stupid, right? Together with most weak hams, all which, sir, though I most powerfully and potently believe, so I believe all of that, yet I hold it not honesty to have it thus set down. So Hamlet is being a literary critic right here. For yourself, sir, shall grow old as I am, if, like a crab, you can go backward. And Polonius is smarter than he appears and says to the crowd, though this be madness, yet there is method in it. And so that phrase in our language, that cliche, method in the madness, it comes straight from here. Shakespeare invented it. And then Polonius asks him, will you walk out of the air, my lord? So would you like to go walking outside? But Hamlet takes it literally and says, yes, into my grave. Because Hamlet is suicidal right now. And Polonius says, indeed, the grave, that's out of the air. And then to the audience, he's explaining Hamlet's mindset as he perceives it, how pregnant sometimes his replies are, a happiness that often madness hits on, which reason and sanity cannot so prosperously be delivered of. Sometimes when people go crazy, they have their very best thoughts. I will leave him and suddenly contrive the means of meeting between him and my daughter. And then he turns back to Hamlet and says, my honorable lord, I will most humbly take my leave of you. And Hamlet looks at him being very literal, purposely, and says, you cannot, sir, take from me anything. So you can't take your leave. You can't take anything from me that I will more willingly part with all. Except my life. Except my life. Except my life. And this is how we know Hamlet is suicidal. You cannot take anything from me unless I want you to. Except that you can take my life. You can take my life. It'd be fine with me if you take my life. And Polonius, he's finally out of words and says, fare you well, my lord. And once he exits the stage, Hamlet looks at the crowd and says, these tedious fools. And Rosencrantz and Guildenstern come onto the stage, and Hamlet is going to interview them and say, look, why are you here? And they're going to lie to him at first. And he's going to say, you're only here by me because my mother sent you. And eventually they will confess, yes. So if you go over, and we have some dirty, before we go to that, some double entendre and dirty talk, where Rosencrantz and Guildenstern say they're most happy because, they don't have obligations. They're not impoverished. They're not rich. Because that's what fortune has done. And Hamlet asks them, how do you both, in line 217? And Rosencrantz says, as the indifferent children of the earth. And Guildenstern says, happy in that we are not over happy. On fortune's cap we are not the very button. So I'm glad that we're in the middle. We're not at the top of fortune or destiny's cap. And Hamlet does this dirty joke. Then you live about her waist. Okay, so the camera won't let me show you that if I act like Michael Jackson and reach down to my waist a little below, but you get the drift. Then you live about her waist or in the middle of her favors. So Hamlet is asking them, but you're fucking fortune, right? Or I guess I should say, you're forking futsin? I don't know. Anyway, and they all have a good laugh, and the audience would have a good laugh at that. Yeah, we don't live up on her cap. We're not down there at her boots, but we live right in the center. Ah, then you must be having sex with fortune. And then Hamlet lets this out, and this is his real mind. He calls Denmark a prison in line 235. And why does he feel that way? That where he was born, what he is destined to lead is a prison, is because he feels trapped. He feels trapped by his father's ghost, who has told him to get vengeance. He doesn't feel like he can be the person he wants to be. And so, in this sense, fortune has not dealt him a good hand. So once they finally confessed that they were sent by the king and queen, Hamlet says in line 278, I will tell you why I'm acting like this, why I look like this, why I'm unkempt. So shall my anticipation prevent your discovering your secrecy to the king and queen, moult no feather. I'll tell you why I'm like this, so that you don't have to pretend like you discovered it. But he does not want his friends to tell the king and queen, I have of late lost all my mirth, so I'm not happy, forgone all custom of exercises, and indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition that this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. And then Hamlet signals up to the sky, this most excellent canopy, the air, seems to me, this most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave, over-changing firmament, this magical roof fretted with golden fire, it appears no other thing to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapors. And then here's another famous line from this play, what a piece of work is man. And you probably heard this, oh, so-and-so is a real piece of work. They're referencing Shakespeare without knowing it. What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty and ability, in form and moving, how express and admirable, in action, how like an angel, in apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. Humans are the highest form of animals, he says. And then, and this is how we can tell how he's feeling, and yet to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me, no, nor a woman either. So humans are so beautiful, and I don't really care. Dust to dust, earth to earth, and Metallica fade to black. Hamlet is so depressed that even though he believes that human beings are the greatest of all animals, the paragon, which means perfection, it doesn't interest him anymore. Even though he knows that the sky is beautiful, it doesn't interest him anymore. Even though the whole planet is beautiful, it doesn't interest anymore. And if that is not depression, I don't know what is. And remember the stages of grief. Denial, or surprise, shock, anger, negotiation, depression. And Hamlet, at this moment in the play, I'm not saying he won't go back to anger, because he's going to. And that's how people are when they grieve. They jump through all of the stages of depression in order to finally get to reconciliation. Unfortunately, and this is a spoiler alert, there's not going to be any reconciliation or acceptance for Hamlet. And Rosencrantz lets him know, look, there's a bunch of actors, or players, as they're called back in Shakespearean times, that have arrived at the castle. And this is when we're going to see that Shakespeare uses this opportunity to have Hamlet become the playwright, the director, which usually those two were combined back then. Playwright and director were one. And the actor. And Shakespeare will use this moment to criticize the current fad in Elizabethan culture, which is that, oh, isn't it cute to see childhood actors? Shakespeare does not like childhood actors. I wonder why. Look, he's already living in a time that says he can't have any women actors, so men have to play the women's parts. In other plays, he'll criticize bringing animals on the stage too. He gets pissed off at this stuff because it becomes very hot, and he wants people to spend the money to see his own plays. Anyway, but it's very difficult to work with child actors. They get tired, they get frustrated, they don't do what they're told to do. So we see in line 320, Hamlet asks, what are they, children? Who maintains them? Who takes care of them? How are they escorted? Will they pursue the quality? No longer can they sing? Will they not say afterwards that they should grow themselves to common players, common actors? As it's most likely, if their means are no better. Their writers do them wrong to make them exclaim against their own succession. So how is it fair to have child actors criticizing adults when they themselves will become adults? And people are loving these plays, and Rosencrantz lets Hamlet know that people have gone to cuffs, meaning fisticuffs, meaning punching. And in line 330, Hamlet says, is it possible? Oh, yes, there's been much throwing about of brains, meaning people hitting each other in the head. And Hamlet asks, so did the mature actors carry it away, the boys? Aye, that they do, my lord. Hercules and his load too, which Shakespeare right here is doing a shameless plug for his own theater, the Globe, which outside showed Hercules carrying, like Atlas, the whole world on his back. So then Polonius is going to re-enter the stage where Hamlet says that he's a great baby, not yet out of his swaddling clouts, meaning his swaddling clothes. And obviously Polonius is an old man. So Polonius is like, oh my God, he is crazy, crazy. And then Rosencrantz makes the observation. Happily, he's the second time come to them, for they say an old man is twice a child. And if you've had experience with elderly people, your grandparents or your own parents, possibly, it's true. As people get old, oftentimes they become like children. One has to feed them, care for them, watch them, and change their diapers. You're lucky if you've never had that happen to you, but mark my words, it'll happen to you sometime. And so then we have a whole bunch of lines where the actors come on stage and Hamlet asks them to recite a well-known play that has to do with the execution, the murder of a king. And they do passably well for Hamlet. And he tells them, look, I'm going to write a few lines. Can you add that into the play I want you to play? And of course, the actors who are out of work because they're not the latest fashion, since they are not children, they say, well, of course we will. And they don't have any problem memorizing the new lines that Hamlet will give them. And then, finally, Hamlet is by himself on the stage, where he calls in line 534 his uncle the king, bloody, bawdy villain, remorseless, treacherous, lecherous, kindless villain. And then he's like, oh, vengeance, I'm going to kill that son of a gun. But because he saw a ghost, he's still questioning himself whether that's real or not. And he doesn't want to be too hasty. So he's going to have the actors put on a play that shows a king being killed, just as his father was, just as the ghost told him, in his sleep, so that he can watch. He can keep his eye out to see the reaction of his uncle father. Or, oh, dare I say, his mother's fucker. If you go to line 5, so Hamlet is becoming the director of the play that's going to happen, a play within a play. 549, he says, I'll have these players play something like the murder of my own father before mine uncle, and I will observe his looks. And then he ends his soliloquy with these lines, 559, the play is the thing wherein I will catch the conscience of the king. Watching my uncle, who is the current king, and his reaction to this play. And Shakespeare is always calling attention to theatricality. Kind of like getting a memo in the middle of you're watching a beautiful movie. By the way, you're watching a movie. Or you're watching a play in the theater. By the way, you're watching a play. I will use this play to find out what his conscience is. So that's what's going on in Act 2 of Shakespeare's Hamlet. What is wrong with Hamlet? And I would ask you to think, what is right with Hamlet? Thank you so much.